I am Judge Judy, and let me tell you something right off the bat. My whole life story is not for the faint of heart, so if you're looking for some soft, sugar-coated fairy tale, you might as well walk out that door right now because that's not what you're going to get from me. I was born on October 21, 1942, in Brooklyn, New York, and honey, when I came into this world, I came out screaming not because I was scared, but because I was already annoyed at how slowly everything was moving. My parents, Murray and Ethel Blum, were good, hardworking people. My father was a dentist. My mother ran an office, and they raised me with one simple rule: don't ever depend on anyone else to fight your battles for you. I was that little girl in the neighborhood who would line up all the other kids and tell them exactly what they were doing wrong, and you know what? They listened. Courtroom, not because I was bigger than them, but because I had something they didn't. I had the nerve to tell the truth, even when it made people uncomfortable. My grandmother used to look at me and say, "Judith, you have a mouth on you like nobody's business." And I took that as a compliment because in my house, courtroom, being quiet was never seen as a virtue. I went to James Madison High School, and even back then I knew I wasn't going to be one of those girls who just wanted to find a husband and settle down. No disrespect to those who do, but that life would have suffocated me. Courtroom. So I went to American University in Washington, D.C., got my degree in government, and then I made a decision that shocked a lot of people. I decided to go to law school. Now let me paint you a picture. This was the early 1960s. Courtroom and law school classrooms were filled with men in suits who looked at women like we had wandered into the wrong building by mistake. When I walked into my first class at Washington College of Law, there were 125 men and exactly one woman, me, and I could see it in their eyes. What is she doing here? Courtroom. So you know what I did? I sat right in the front row. I answered every question the professor threw at me. And by the end of the first semester, those same men were lining up to borrow my notes because they realized I wasn't just there to take up space. I was there to run the show. Courtroom. I finished my law degree at New York Law School, passed the bar in 1965, and thought, all right, Judy, this is it. You're going to change the world. But the world had other plans. My first job was as a corporate lawyer for a cosmetics company, and let me just say, courtroom, that was the most boring 6 months of my entire existence. I was sitting in a beige office, reviewing contracts about lipstick ingredients, and I remember looking out the window one day thinking, this is what you work so hard for? To argue about the shade of red in a tube of lipstick? Absolutely not. Courtroom, so I quit. Just like that. And then I did what everyone told me not to do. I got married and had babies. I married Ronald Levy in 1964, and we had 2 beautiful children, Jamie and Adam, and for a few years, courtroom, I stayed home and raised those kids because I wanted to be the kind of mother who was actually present. But here's the thing about me, I can only sit still for so long before I start climbing the walls. So when the kids got a little older, I called up the New York Family Court and said, I'm a lawyer. Courtroom. I've got experience and I'm ready to come back. They hired me as a prosecutor, and let me tell you something, that job woke me up in a way nothing else ever had. I was in the courtroom every single day, dealing with real people, real problems, real lies, and real consequences. I loved every second of it. Courtroom. In 1982, something happened that changed everything. The mayor of New York, Ed Koch, appointed me as a judge in the criminal court. You should seen the faces of the old-timers when I walked into that courtroom in my robe for the first time. They didn't know what hit them. 4 years later, courtroom, I became the supervising judge in Manhattan's family court, and that's when people really started to notice me because I wasn't one of those judges who just sits up there and nods along while people waste the court's time with their nonsense.
Oh no.
I looked people right in the eye, courtroom, and I told them exactly what I thought. If you were lying, I called you a liar. If you were wasting my time, I told you to sit down and shut up. And if you were being a fool, I made sure everyone in that room knew it. The lawyers were terrified of me. The litigants were terrified of me. And you know what? Courtroom, that's exactly how I wanted it, because when you're sitting in that chair, you're not there to be liked. You're there to get to the truth. I handled over 20,000 cases during my time on the bench, and every single one of them taught me something about human nature. People lie, people cheat. Courtroom. People try to take advantage of each other, and most of the time, they're not even smart enough to lie well. In 1993, a reporter from the Los Angeles Times named Josh Getlin wrote a profile about me, and suddenly people outside of New York started to know who I was. Then 60 Minutes came knocking, yes, courtroom, the real 60 Minutes, and they did a segment on me, and after that aired, my phone didn't stop ringing. Everyone wanted a piece of Judge Judy, but the call that really mattered came from CBS in 1995. They said, Judge Judy, we want to give you your own television show. I almost laughed in their faces. Me? Courtroom. On TV, I was already in my 50s. I wasn't some young, pretty thing they could put in a tight dress and parade in front of the cameras. But they insisted, and after a lot of back and forth, I finally said yes, thinking, fine, I'll do it for a few seasons, maybe 3 or 4, courtroom, and then I'll retire to Florida and live a quiet life. Well, that quiet life is still waiting for me because on September 16, 1996, the Judge Judy show premiered, and honey, the world has never been the same. From day one, Courtroom. I treated that television courtroom the exact same way I treated my real courtroom. No nonsense, no patience for fools, and absolutely no tolerance for people who think they can lie to my face. The first few episodes, the producers kept trying to tell me, Judge Judy, maybe don't be so harsh. Courtroom. Maybe smile a little more. Maybe let them finish their sentence before you interrupt them. And I said, let me tell you something. I've been doing this job for over a decade, and I didn't get here by smiling at people who are lying through their teeth. You hired me to be me, so either you let me be me, courtroom, or I'm walking out that door. They let me be me, and thank God they did, because within 2 years, my show was the highest-rated courtroom program on television, not just among women, not just among older viewers, but across every single demographic you can imagine. Young people loved me. Courtroom. Old people loved me, men loved me, women loved me. Even the people I yelled at on the show loved me because they knew I was fair. I didn't care if you were rich or poor, black or white, a CEO or a janitor. If you came into my courtroom with the truth, I had your back. Courtroom. But if you came in there with a story that didn't add up, if you thought you could pull one over on me, you were about to have the worst day of your life. Over the next 25 years, I presided over more than 20 courtroom. 1,000 cases on television, everything from dog bites and broken leases to cheating exes and stolen engagement rings. And along the way, I became one of the highest paid television personalities in history. I won a Daytime Emmy for Outstanding Legal Courtroom Program. Courtroom. I got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and I proved to every single person who ever doubted me that a loudmouthed Jewish girl from Brooklyn could take over the world. But you know what the best part was? The best part was every time a young woman came up to me on the street and said, Judge Judy, courtroom, you inspired me to become a lawyer, or Judge Judy, you made me brave enough to stand up for myself. That meant more to me than any award or any paycheck, because that's exactly why I did it. Not for the money, not for the fame, but to show people that you don't have to be popular to be powerful. Courtroom, you just have to be right. In 2021, after 25 seasons and over 5,000 episodes, I finally decided to end the show. Everyone asked me, Judge Judy, why now? And I said, because I'm 78 years old, courtroom, and I've been yelling at people on television for a quarter of a century. I think I've earned the right to take a nap. But don't you worry, I didn't disappear into the sunset like some retired old lady who knits sweaters and feeds pigeons in the park. Oh no. I started a new show called Judy Justice. Courtroom, because apparently I can't help myself, and I also wrote a whole bunch of books, Win or Lose by How You Choose, Keep It Simple, Stupid, and a few others, because I figured if I'm going to keep talking, I might as well get paid for it. And let me tell you something about the people who come on my show, Courtroom, both the old one and the new one, they never learn. They still come in there with their wild stories about how their roommate stole their toothbrush, or their cousin crashed their car, or their landlord turned off the heat in the middle of winter. Courtroom, and they still look me in the eye and lie like their life depends on it. And I still do the same thing I've been doing since 1942. I call them out. I say, baloney, that's ridiculous. You sound like a fool. And my personal favorite, Courtroom, I'm not giving you a quarter because you don't have a quarter's worth of credibility. People ask me all the time, Judge Judy, what's the secret to your success? And I tell them the truth. The secret is that I don't care if you like me. I really, truly, from the bottom of my heart, do not care. Courtroom. I care about one thing and one thing only, the truth. You bring me the truth, we're going to get along just fine. You bring me a pile of nonsense wrapped in excuses and bad decisions, and I'm going to hand it right back to you with a lecture you'll remember for the rest of your life. That's who I am. Courtroom, that's who I've always been. That loudmouth little girl from Brooklyn who refused to sit down, who refused to be quiet, who refused to let anyone tell her what she couldn't do. And you know what else? I'm not done yet. As long as I can still talk, and trust me, Courtroom, that's never going to be a problem. I'm going to keep showing up, keep telling people the truth, keep making sure that justice isn't just some fancy word that rich people use to get what they want. Justice is for everybody. Courtroom, and I don't care if you're a millionaire or you're living in your car, you walk into my courtroom, you get the same Judy. The same Brooklyn-born, no-nonsense, I will call you a liar to your face Judy. Now let me tell you some real specific cases because I know you love the drama. Courtroom. There was this one time a woman came into my courtroom, let's call her Miss Clueless, and she was suing her ex-boyfriend for $5,000 because he sold her car while she was on vacation. I said, Mom, whose name was on the title? She said, his name, but it was my car. I said, Courtroom, let me explain something to you, sweetheart. If his name is on the title, it's his car. You gave him the money, but you didn't do the paperwork. That's not his fault. That's your fault. She started crying, and I said, save your tears for someone who cares. You want to own a car? Courtroom. Put your name on the paper. Case dismissed. And then there was the famous dog bite case. Oh, you've seen that one, haven't you? The one where the little boy got bitten and the woman said, my dog is a good dog. He's never bitten anyone before. And I said, well, he bit this boy. Courtroom. So either you're lying or the dog lied to you, but either way, you're paying for the medical bills. People always try to use the he's a good dog defense, and I always tell them the same thing. I don't care if your dog volunteers at a homeless shelter on weekends. He bit someone. You pay. Courtroom. And then there was the case of the stolen engagement ring. Oh, that one was a classic. This woman claimed her ex-fiancé broke into her apartment and stole the ring back. The man said, she gave it back to me when we broke up. I looked at her and said, did you give it back? She said, no, he took it. Courtroom. I said, do you have a police report? She said, no. I said, do you have any witnesses? She said, no. I said, so let me get this straight. A man allegedly broke into your apartment, stole a ring, and you didn't call the police. You didn't tell anyone. You just decided to sue him 3 months later. Courtroom. You expect me to believe that? She didn't say anything. I said, that's what I thought. Case dismissed. People are crazy, I tell you. Absolutely crazy. And the lies they come up with, you wouldn't believe it. One woman said her neighbor's cat gave her anxiety. I said, a cat? A cat gave you anxiety? Courtroom. She said, yes, Your Honor. It stares at me through the window. I said, get curtains. Case dismissed. A man said his roommate ate his leftovers and that was emotional distress. I said, you want $5,000 because someone ate your meatloaf. He said, it was a very good meatloaf. I said, courtroom, get out of my courtroom before I hold you in contempt for wasting my time. And that's the thing about being a judge. You have to have a sense of humor about it, otherwise you'd go crazy. You see the best and worst of humanity every single day. You see people who are genuinely hurting and need help, courtroom, and you see people who are just trying to scam the system and think they're smarter than everyone else in the room. Spoiler alert, they're not smarter than me. I've been doing this since before they were born, and I've heard every excuse, every lie, every sob story in the book. The I lost my job excuse, courtroom. The my mother was sick excuse. The I was going to pay, but then my car broke down excuse. Honey, please, I've heard it all. And let me tell you something about the people who watch my show. You guys are the best. You come up to me in the grocery store, in the airport, in restaurants, and you say, courtroom, Judge Judy, I watch you every day, and you taught me that I don't have to take nonsense from anyone. And that makes my heart smile, even if my face doesn't show it, because let's be honest, I'm not a smiley person. But inside, I'm thinking, yes, that's exactly right. Don't take nonsense from anyone. Courtroom, that's my legacy. Not the money, not the fame, not the star on the Walk of Fame. It's the people who learned to stand up for themselves because they saw some old lady in a robe on television who refused to back down. I get letters from young girls who say, I want to be a lawyer because of you. Courtroom, and I write back, good. Now be a better one than I was. Be smarter, be tougher, and don't ever let anyone tell you that you can't do something because you're a woman. Because let me tell you something, when I started law school, people told me I was wasting my time. When I became a judge, courtroom, people said I was too aggressive. When I got my own TV show, people said it would last 6 months. Look at me now. 25 years, 5,000 episodes, hundreds of millions of dollars, and the respect of millions of people around the world. Not bad for a loudmouth girl from Brooklyn, huh? Courtroom. So that's my story, the whole story, from 1942 to today, from a little apartment in Brooklyn to a television studio in Los Angeles, from a girl who was told to be quiet to a woman who everyone listens to. I am Judge Judy, and this has been my whole damn life. Now get out of my face, I'm tired of talking. Courtroom, but before you go, remember this. Be honest, be brave, and never, ever, ever let anyone treat you like you don't matter. Because you do. And if you forget that, just turn on your television and watch me remind you. Court is adjourned.